guys, this is Steve Huff from stevehufpphoto.com, and today I want to tell you about a lens that's pretty old, but I consider it a legend. I am talking about the Canon 50mm f1.2, and here's why it has just become my new favorite 50. I'm going to tell you guys a little story first. I'll make it quick, I promise, about my first experience with the Canon 50 f1.2L. It was many, many years ago, early 2000s. I don't remember the exact year, but I had it with a 5D or 5D Mark II, and I loved it, except one thing had me sell it or get rid of it at the time, and that was because it was severely front or back focusing with my Canon body, my DSLR at the time. It frustrated me, and I had to stop it down to get focus accuracy. And back then, Canon didn't offer the ability to tweak your settings, to dial in the AF discrepancies like they do in the bodies today. So I got rid of it then, but when that lens nailed focus, it just had something about it, a special quality, kind of like a smooth, creamy, dreamy, not really dreamy. I'm not talking about like old dream lens stuff. This lens right here is so much better than that lens, yet it's not a technically perfect lens either. So there's so many 50s. I wrote a complete review and article with loads of photos at my website, stevehufpphoto.com, and that's there if anybody wants to check it out. And I talk about the countless other 50s I've used, owned, tested, and reviewed. And I'm talking like a Noctilux at $11,000, Sony 50 Zeiss f1.4, that's also a fantastic lens. All Leica 50s I've tested. I've tested Nikon 50s, Canon 50s. Just about, if it was 50mm, I probably used it at some point in time. But this lens has always held a place in my heart because I knew when it nailed focus, it would give off this unique rendering that no other lens gives besides the Canon 85-1.2. So this lens here is small but fat. It's short and stout. I like to call it short round because it's short and it's round and it's not overly huge, okay? So this lens is not too heavy. So you're getting an f1.2 aperture with a 50mm focal range, which means your depth of field is going to be extremely shallow. You can set this to f1.2, and that's the only way I shoot it. And if I'm shooting it out in the day, I have an ND filter on it, of course, because that is where it offers the special quality. As a matter of fact, if you step it down to f2, it retains that quality but sharpens up dramatically. But there's something about that rendering at f1.2 that gives you that creamy, out of focus background, the shallow depth of field, and this lens excels in the color department. You're not going to get any wonky off colors or you know, color casts over your images or video. But I'm talking about this lens strictly as a photo lens. I don't see this as really a video lens. There's better lenses you can buy in the 50mm range for video. But for photo, this lens is in a league of its own. And while it's not cheap, and Canon does offer the 50-1.8 and the 50-1.4 for much lower prices, and those lenses are equally as fantastic, the Canon 50-1.2L is for those who want build quality, weather sealing, that extra fast aperture of f1.2, and the Bouquet or Bokeh, however you would like to say it, is some of the smoothest and most beautiful that I've encountered in a lens. As a matter of fact, I prefer the Bokeh in this lens to even the Leica Noctilux that comes in at $11,000.
What you talking about, Willis?
The cool thing is these days, on something like a Canon 6D2, a Canon 5D4, a Canon 1DX2, you can make sure the autofocus is perfect with this lens by just dialing it in into the camera. So that's what I've done with this lens, and now that I've done that, the focus is spot on, wide open at any distance I shoot it at. Even if it misses a little bit, the overall look of the lens is just gorgeous. So this lens is a lens that I bonded with many years ago, and I swore to myself, I said, if I ever buy another Canon body, I will buy this lens right off the bat with it. And I did just that. If any of you followed me recently, you saw I bought a Canon 6D2, a 1DX Mark II, and I also own an M50 with an adapter so I can use lenses like this with it. But this lens shines on a full frame sensor because it's made for a full frame sensor. You can use it on a crop frame, which will give you about an 80mm equivalent field of view. But on full frame, you're getting that 50, that fast aperture, beautiful color. On the 1DX2, the focus is extremely fast, and it even focuses in super low light accurately. I took this lens out to shoot a band last night at a place called the Lost Leaf in Phoenix. I go there often, and I have shot cameras here in this location. All kinds of cameras: Sony A7R2, Sony A7R3, the Sony A9, the Hasselblad X1D, the Leica SL, the Olympus EM1 Mark II. And I'll be straight up honest with you, there's not many cameras that can handle this venue. I have a photographer friend who shoots there all the time, and he shoots an A7S II, which is probably the best Sony to use in that venue due to the extreme low light. Shooting the 1DX2 with the 50 f1.2 was a breeze. So this lens is really a one-of-a-kind lens. Sure, there's many fast 50s. You have the Mitacon f9.5. It gets nowhere near the Canon here. You have the Sony 51.4 Zeiss, which is beautiful, and it's just as beautiful as this, but it's a little more perfect. It's a little more modern. The Sony 51.4 is crisp, great color, nice bokeh, but it's different. This lens from Canon offers a more artistic approach due to the way that depth of field is, the shallow depth of field, the way that blur falls off from your subject, the way your subject is rendered in a three-dimensional way. There's just something about it. So at $1,299, $1,299, it's not a cheap lens, but it's a lens that has gotten rave reviews over the years. It's a lens that's going to hopefully stay with me for a long time because I do really adore it. And I will make this statement right here: of all the cameras and lens combos, including the Leica SL and Sony A9, the best combo that I have used in that low light venue for shooting bands has been this 50 f1.2 and the Canon 1DX Mark II. So I'm gonna let you guys see some images from this lens. And keep in mind, these are ISO 6400 to 12800. I have noise reduction turned off, and every one of these is a JPEG from the camera. For most of these, I used a custom color profile from EOS HD, and that is the chrome preset, and I also used the monochrome preset. So let's take a look at some photos.
Alright, so here are some shots from the 1DX2 and the 51.2, all wide open, all JPEGs. The dynamic range was lovely actually, and compared to most other cameras I shot here, it seemed like I had more dynamic range, which is odd because everyone says the Canon dynamic range is lousy. I have had some dynamic range issues in bright sunlight, but as far as low light, it seems to be a perfect match. This lens renders in a way that's different from any other 50 I've used, and as I've stated, I've used almost all of them, from the uber exotic Noctilux to the nifty 50s of every brand. And this one just kind of has something special about it, a mojo, a magical kind of rendering that kind of sets apart the look of it. The only other lens I know of that renders like this lens is Canon's own 85 f1.2, which is also a beautiful but heavy and slow to focus lens, that 85. But this, you know, it's just giving off such a pleasing look. And not all photos here are masterpieces. I never claim to have any masterpieces, but I do what I enjoy. I shoot what I enjoy. I love getting out there and just taking photos of live musicians. It's just something I've always loved to do, and seeing that there's so many local music clubs around here where I can just go and shoot, and the bands love it. They love when you shoot and take their photos. This was taken at the Lost Leaf. The band's name, they are called the Schisms. They were very cool. They were a little rock, metal, aggressive, but they sounded really good. That intro I put in the beginning, I'm well aware that it was overblown and distorted. I wasn't trying to record audio. I wasn't even going to use the audio, but I thought the distorted intro was cool to introduce this band. So look at the three-dimensionality of this lens. This is kind of a mid-distance shot. Smooth, creamy bokeh, sharp enough for me. I don't like overly sharp lenses at the focus point. Here's one right out of the camera without using those color profiles. This is using the standard Canon profile. That red looks electric Here's one using the monochrome preset from EOS HD loaded into the camera. And keep in mind, these are all high ISO, 6400 all the way up to 12,800. And here at the end, I'm going to show you a couple at 25,000. But I love this shot, just the rendering of the lens. It's like an artist's tool. A lens is like your paintbrush. When you're an artist and you paint on canvas, you choose your brushes carefully. It should be no different with photography. Choose your lenses as you would choose your artist's brush. These lenses are your tools. They will help create the vision that you see in your head. And for some reason, for years, I've always seen in shallow depth of field. I can always envision the shot before I take it. I can envision what each shot would look like at any specific aperture. And I always gravitate in these kind of situations to wide open lenses because A, it's dark, this is a torturous environment for photography, and B, you just want it to look ethereal. I'd want it to look ethereal. I want it to look magical and different from all the rest. This was actually a reflection in a window of the band, of the bassist, and I really deepened the contrast of this one to make it stick out. Sometimes you don't have to have a perfect shot to have a nice shot. Here's a detail, just his shoe, you know, he kept slamming on his pedal board, and I just got down low and fired a shot. I don't really like it, but it's there because it's different. Here's one of him in action, a little motion blur, which is okay to get sometimes in these kind of a situation. You never really want to go for technically perfect shots when shooting musicians. Here is one of the band. This is a very small place, the Lost Leaf. It's very intimate. There were maybe 8-10 people there. Here's one of Debbie at ISO 25,000 at our very dark table. I always do a test shot here with all cameras, and the ISO 25K, even in color, doesn't look bad at all. I mean, it's good to know I can go up to that level if need be.
So this lens is fantastic. It's beautiful in every way. The weaknesses are really few and the pros are many. If you want a lens that will stand out, be a little artistic, offer a nice, creamy, dreamy look, but not too dreamy to where it's overly soft, then the Canon 50 f1.2 should be on your audition list. If you've been thinking about this lens, I highly recommend at least renting it to see what it is like for you, if it's something you like. If you put this on one of your Canon SLRs or DSLRs and the focus is off, make sure to dial in that focus tweaking for the lenses where you can dial in back focus or front focus. That's what I did, and now the focus is perfect. This is a beautiful lens any way you look at it. There are cheaper choices that are also good, but they do not really compete with the Canon 50 1.2. To me, this lens is a legend. It kind of stands out on its own. So there you go. That was my quick look at the 50 f1.2 from Canon, a legendary lens, a beautiful lens, a lens that is highly unlikely to disappoint anyone. I don't recommend it for beginners. If you're a beginner, check out the 50-1.8 or 50-1.4. This is a lens that you want once you get the hang of shooting a fast prime, once you make sure you enjoy shooting a fast prime, and you want to step up your photos to be more unique than the competition. So this is Steve, stevehufpphoto.com. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.